my friends, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for gathering here today. I want to begin with a stark and unsettling truth. History does not forgive reckless decisions, and nations that gamble with their future often find themselves paying a price far greater than they ever imagined. We stand at a moment where one grave mistake has just been made, and its consequences, if not recognized, could send shockwaves across America and beyond. Former President Donald Trump has taken a step that I consider not only misguided, but profoundly dangerous. And the tragedy is that no one, neither our leaders nor our institutions, nor our citizens, is truly ready for what comes next. Let me be clear, this is not about partisan politics. This is about responsibility, wisdom, and the future of our democracy and global stability. Trump's move, whether in foreign policy, economic decision making, or the rhetoric he has unleashed, represents a critical miscalculation. It is the kind of misstep that leaders make when they are more concerned with personal power than with the collective good. And the United States is already standing on shaky ground, facing economic uncertainty, social division, climate crisis, and international instability. To add to this fragile equation, a reckless political gamble is nothing short of lighting a match in a dry forest. When we speak of political miscalculations, we often imagine minor errors, mistakes that can be corrected with time, negotiation, or policy adjustments. But there are moments in history when a single misstep changes the trajectory of an entire nation, when a decision rooted in self-interest, arrogance, or short-term gain unleashes consequences that cannot be contained. This is the warning that must be heard today. Donald Trump's most recent move is not just a political miscalculation, it is a destabilizing act that threatens to ignite a chain reaction across America's fragile landscape. The danger here is not abstract, it is immediate, tangible, and potentially catastrophic. If ignored, this could prove to be one of the defining turning points of our time. Consider the state of America right now. The nation is burdened with economic uncertainty, a polarized electorate, a weakened sense of institutional trust, and a geopolitical environment that grows more volatile with each passing month. Against this backdrop, Trump's decision, crafted not with foresight, but with personal ambition, has poured fuel on an already smoldering fire. It is not simply the nature of the decision itself, but the timing, the tone, and the message it sends to both allies and adversaries that make it so alarming. The United States cannot afford reckless gambles when its very foundations are already under strain. Yet this is exactly what has happened. What makes this mistake so consequential is the way it destabilizes multiple fronts at once. Domestically, it emboldens the politics of division, deepening the cultural and ideological chasms that already threaten national cohesion. Internationally, it projects weakness, signaling to rivals that America is preoccupied with internal strife and therefore less capable of strategic leadership. Economically, it risks shaking investor confidence and undermining the fragile recovery that millions of households depend upon. This is not a single issue blunder. It is a multi-dimensional crisis born from one act of political recklessness. History provides chilling reminders of what happens when great powers miscalculate at moments of fragility. The collapse of empires, the rise of extremist movements, the unraveling of social contracts, these are not distant abstractions, but very real outcomes that unfold when leaders fail to grasp the weight of their decisions. Trump's mistake, if unaddressed, has the potential to move the United States down such a path. And what is perhaps most alarming is that the American public, lulled by the daily noise of politics, may not fully realize the gravity of what is unfolding until the damage is already done. The hook here is simple yet unsettling. America is playing with fire, and most people do not even see the flames. This moment should jolt the nation awake. It should spark urgent conversations about accountability, leadership, and the responsibilities of power. But instead, it risks being drowned out by partisan bickering, media sensationalism, and a dangerous normalization of reckless behavior. That normalization is the real enemy. Once a country begins to accept recklessness as routine, it sets itself on a path where crisis is not a possibility, but an inevitability. And so the question becomes, how long can America afford to ignore the warning signs? How long before this miscalculation ripples outward, destabilizing markets, emboldening adversaries, and eroding the bonds of unity at home? The clock is ticking, and every day spent in denial only magnifies the eventual cost. The tragedy is that the mistake could have been avoided. The greater tragedy would be to let its consequences spiral out of control. If there is one lesson history teaches us, it is that nations rarely collapse from a single blow. They collapse from the compounded weight of miscalculations that leaders and citizens alike refuse to confront in time. There are moments in history when the gravest danger a nation faces is not from its external enemies, but from its own blindness. That is precisely where America stands today. The problem is not just that a major political mistake has been made, it is that the nation is largely unaware of the scale of the danger. This is what makes the situation so perilous. The United States is sleepwalking into crisis, lulled by routine, distracted by partisan noise, and numbed by the endless churn of headlines. When people cannot see the storm gathering on the horizon, they make no effort to prepare. And when it finally breaks, they are caught completely defenseless. Profound risks often hide in plain sight. Institutions that once seemed strong are quietly eroding. Trust in government media and even science is crumbling. The economy remains vulnerable with staggering debt levels, widening inequality, and a financial system that is far more fragile than leaders admit. Social divisions are hardening, not softening, with entire communities feeling alienated from one another. And yet, most Americans still live as if none of this could possibly come to a head. The sense of invincibility, the belief that the system will hold is dangerously misplaced. History teaches us that when complacency becomes the norm, collapse is often not far behind. The hook here is startling. The greatest threat to America is not a missile, not a foreign adversary, not even an economic downturn. It is the illusion that the country is prepared when in fact it is profoundly unready. That illusion breeds inaction, and inaction guarantees that when the reckoning comes, it will be devastating. People convince themselves that America has survived every crisis before, so it will survive the next one. But past resilience does not guarantee future security. Civilizations fall not because they lacked resources or opportunities to endure, but because they failed to recognize the warning signs in time. What is most troubling is how normalized dysfunction has become. Government shutdowns, bitter partisanship, policy paralysis, reckless rhetoric, all of this is treated as if it were business as usual. But when dysfunction becomes routine, it ceases to trigger alarm, and that is when it becomes most dangerous. The mistake that has been made at the top is compounded by a society too exhausted or too distracted to resist it. People watch the spectacle like an endless drama, forgetting that the stage is their own country, and the consequences will fall not on distant players, but on themselves and their children. This complacency extends to foreign policy as well. The assumption that America will always remain the world's dominant power blinds leaders and citizens alike to the shifting realities of a multipolar world. Rivals such as China and Russia are not only growing stronger, but are exploiting America's internal fractures. Yet most Americans, insulated by distance and accustomed to global leadership, fail to see how quickly the balance is changing. Sleepwalking in geopolitics is perhaps even more dangerous than sleepwalking at home, because it risks inviting miscalculations that can spiral into conflict before the nation even recognizes it is vulnerable. The tragedy is that this sleepwalking state is entirely preventable. The signs are all around us: declining public trust, widening inequality, a political system paralyzed by division, and a culture that mistakes distraction for awareness. But awareness requires effort, and vigilance requires courage. Instead of rising to meet these challenges, the country drifts along, comforted by the illusion that tomorrow will look like yesterday. That decline is impossible. That catastrophe belongs to other nations, not this one. This is the mindset that makes crisis not only possible, but inevitable. The uncomfortable truth is that America cannot afford to continue on this path of denial. Sleepwalking through history has always ended the same way, with nations waking up to a reality they can no longer control. The question is whether America will choose to wake up before it is too late, or whether it will continue to move blindly toward consequences that no one is truly ready to face. The greatest danger to any democracy does not always come from outside enemies, but from the fractures that form within its own walls. America today is a striking example of this reality. The very fabric of the nation is being pulled apart by divisions so deep that they no longer resemble healthy debate, but entrenched hostility. When former President Trump adds fuel to these divisions through his rhetoric and actions, the consequences extend far beyond politics. They undermine the social cohesion that keeps a democracy alive. The United States is not facing collapse because of foreign armies at its borders, but because its own citizens are being pushed further and further away from one another, eroding the bonds of trust and common purpose that once held the nation together. At the heart of this division lies a crisis of trust. Citizens no longer believe their institutions work for them. Courts are viewed through partisan lenses. Elections are questioned before ballots are even counted, and media outlets are trusted only by those who already agree with them. The sense that there is a shared truth or a common foundation has all but disappeared. This is where Trump's influence becomes particularly damaging by encouraging suspicion, by framing every issue as us versus them, by treating opponents not as fellow Americans, but as enemies. He accelerates the corrosion of trust in a system that cannot function without it. Democracy cannot survive if its people no longer see one another as part of the same project. The hook is urgent, and unsettling the collapse of trust is more dangerous than the collapse of markets. Economies can recover, but once people stop believing in the legitimacy of their institutions, rebuilding that faith becomes nearly impossible. What we are witnessing is not just political disagreement, it is the unraveling of the social contract itself. The very idea that government exists to serve all citizens is being replaced by the perception that it serves only factions, tribes, or powerful individuals. This shift creates fertile ground for extremism, conspiracy theories, and violence, which thrive when citizens feel abandoned and alienated. The domestic divisions go beyond politics. They cut across communities, workplaces, schools, and even families. Conversations that once could be had in good faith now erupt in anger, mistrust, or silence. People are no longer disagreeing about how to solve problems. They are disagreeing about what reality even is. This is the most dangerous form of division because it makes compromise impossible. How can a nation move forward when half its citizens believe one set of facts and the other half believes another? This is not simply polarization, it is fragmentation, and it is the soil in which democracies die. Adversaries abroad understand this perfectly. They do not need to confront America on the battlefield if America is tearing itself apart from within. Every deepening divide is a gift to those who wish to see American influence weakened. Every moment of chaos is an opportunity for rivals to assert their own power on the global stage while America is consumed by its internal battles. The irony is that while Trump presents himself as a defender of American strength, his divisive approach is the very thing that makes the country weaker, less united, and more vulnerable than it has been in generations. This should serve as a wake up call. The divisions we are witnessing are not just unpleasant, they are existential. A nation cannot stand indefinitely when its people see one another as enemies. The greatest threats to democracy often come not from a coup or a war, but from a slow and steady breakdown of the trust, unity, and mutual respect that makes self-government possible. The United States today stands perilously close to that breaking point. And the mistake of fueling these divisions rather than healing them is one that could haunt the nation for decades. Around the world, nations are watching America with keen interest, not because they admire its strength, as in decades past, but because they see the cracks forming and wonder how deep they will run. The truth is stark. America's rivals do not need to defeat it on the battlefield when the country is already unraveling from within. This is the danger that emerges when leaders like Trump make reckless mistakes, actions that send signals of weakness to adversaries who are patient, calculating, and eager to exploit every opportunity. The global stage has shifted, and while the United States remains powerful, it is increasingly perceived as distracted, divided, and unsteady for competitors such as China and Russia. This is not just a chance to gain ground. It is the strategic opening they have been waiting for. The hook here is simple but chilling. America's greatest enemies today do not need to fire a single shot to gain advantage. They only need to watch the United States destroy itself with division, complacency, and short-sighted leadership. This reality is precisely why Trump's miscalculation matters so profoundly. His decisions and rhetoric project instability, not strength. When American leaders fail to present unity at home, they inadvertently broadcast weakness abroad. And weakness in geopolitics is not merely a perception, it is an invitation. China, for instance, is observing the United States with the discipline of a long-term strategist, while Washington is consumed with domestic polarization and political drama. Beijing is advancing infrastructure projects, securing global supply chains, and extending its influence through initiatives like the Belt and Road. Every moment America spends arguing with itself is a moment China uses to quietly build a future where it holds the economic and technological upper hand. Trump's actions, which deepen America's internal fractures, only make this path easier for Beijing. Uh, the danger is that by the time America wakes up to this shift, it may find itself sidelined in the very arenas it once dominated. Russia takes a different approach, one less about construction and more about disruption. Moscow thrives when Washington is divided because division weakens America's ability to lead coalitions or respond decisively to global crises. Every moment of American chaos is a strategic victory for Russia. Trump's style of politics, which often dismisses alliances and undermines international cooperation, plays directly into Moscow's hands. By shaking confidence in NATO, weakening partnerships with Europe, and prioritizing personal posturing over diplomacy, he leaves America isolated. Isolation for a superpower is not just inconvenient, it is perilous. What makes this moment so volatile is the way global rivals use America's divisions as leverage in their own strategies. When the world sees Congress in gridlock, when it sees leaders undermining their own institutions, when it hears rhetoric that pits Americans against one another, it does not see strength. It sees vulnerability. That vulnerability changes calculations in Beijing and Moscow and in capitals across the globe. It makes adversaries bolder, allies more hesitant, and the international order more unstable. The tragedy is that this vulnerability is self-inflicted. America is not weakened by lack of resources, by insufficient military power, or by lack of innovation. It is weakened because it cannot stop turning inward, tearing itself apart over partisanship and reckless mistakes. Trump's recent misstep amplifies this vulnerability, sending the message that America is more interested in fighting itself than in leading the world. That is the kind of message rivals have waited decades to hear, and they are unlikely to waste the opportunity it presents. History is clear on what happens when great powers lose focus. Rome was not brought down in a single day of battle, but by years of internal decay that left it exposed to external forces. Britain's empire did not collapse overnight, but its decline was hastened by overreach abroad and disunity at home. The United States is now at risk of repeating these patterns, and the mistake we see unfolding today is a glaring reminder of how quickly perception can shift from dominance to decline. The question is no longer whether rivals are watching, they are. The question is how long America can continue on this course before the balance of global power tips irreversibly against it. Every nation, no matter how powerful, eventually encounters a crossroads where it must decide whether to continue down a dangerous path or confront the mistakes that threaten its future. America has reached such a moment, and the recent miscalculation by Donald Trump is more than just another headline. It is a signal flare in the night sky, a warning that the country cannot afford to ignore. Yet this mistake also carries within it something rare and valuable, the chance to wake up before the consequences become irreversible. History often grants warnings before it delivers punishment, but only if those warnings are heeded. The danger of Trump's error lies not only in the divisions it has deepened, but in the opportunity it gives the American people to see perhaps more clearly than ever before the costs of reckless leadership. Mistakes, when they are ignored, become stepping stones to disaster. But when they are acknowledged, they can spark renewal, forcing a society to reconsider what kind of nation it wants to be. This is why the moment is so critical. If America treats this blunder as just another episode in a long line of political dramas, the chance for self-correction will be lost. But if it recognizes this as a turning point, it can begin to reclaim the values of accountability, restraint, and unity that have been overshadowed by division. The hook here is striking. Sometimes it takes a crisis to awaken a people. Trump's miscalculation, as damaging as it is, could serve as that wake up call if Americans are willing to face the uncomfortable truths it exposes. It forces the recognition that leadership without foresight is dangerous, that democracy without vigilance is fragile, and that unity cannot be taken for granted. The mistake highlights the fragility of the system, but it also highlights the power of collective responsibility. If people respond not with apathy, but with renewed determination, this moment could be remembered not as the beginning of decline, but as the catalyst for renewal. America has long prided itself on resilience. Time and again, it has faced challenges, wars, economic collapses, civil unrest, and found ways to endure. But resilience is not automatic. It requires action, sacrifice, and an honest confrontation with failure. The danger today is not that America cannot recover, but that it may lack the will to do so. Trump's misstep should ignite that will. it should remind Americans that democracy demands more than voting every 4 years. It demands constant engagement, constant vigilance, and the courage to hold leaders accountable, no matter how powerful they may appear. What makes this moment so urgent is the speed at which events now move. In a globalized world where markets react in seconds and foreign rivals act with precision, the window for self-correction is smaller than ever. Trump's mistake has already signaled weakness abroad and deepened division at home. The longer the nation waits to address it, the harder it will be to reverse the damage. This is why the wake up call must be taken seriously, not tomorrow, not in the next election cycle, but now. The cost of delay could be measured not just in political turmoil, but in the loss of credibility, stability, and influence that once defined America's role in the world. There is a deeper truth at work here. Every democracy faces moments when it must decide whether to renew itself or allow decay to set in. The United States is no exception. Trump's mistake, as grave as it is, can serve as the mirror America needs to look into, reflecting both the fragility of its current state and the possibility of a stronger, wiser future. It is a painful reminder that leadership matters, that unity matters, and that the survival of democracy is not guaranteed, but earned day by day through the choices a society makes. There is a dangerous illusion at the heart of American politics, and it is the belief that salvation will always come from above, that politicians, institutions, or presidents will somehow steer the nation back to stability without the active involvement of the people. Uh, History shows us that this has never been true. Democracies endure not because of the wisdom of leaders alone, but because ordinary citizens remain vigilant, engaged, and unwilling to surrender their responsibility. In this moment, when Trump's mistake has exposed the fragility of America's democracy, the burden of correction cannot rest on politicians who are often trapped in cycles of ambition and self-preservation. It must fall on the people themselves. The hook is powerful if citizens wait for politicians to fix the damage. They will wait forever. This is the sobering truth of democratic life. Leadership follows the energy of the people, not the other way around. When citizens demand accountability, leaders respond. When citizens grow complacent, leaders exploit that silence. Trump's blunder has shown how easy it is for reckless politics to destabilize the system, but it also offers a reminder that the strength of democracy lies not in the figure at the podium, but in the millions of voices that can rise to demand change. The danger of ignoring this responsibility is that it allows the erosion of democracy to accelerate unchecked. Institutions are not self-sustaining, they require constant defense. The rule of law only exists when citizens insist it be applied fairly. Freedom of the press only survives when the public values truth over spectacle. And elections only matter when people see them not as battles between enemies, but as instruments of collective decision making. When Trump undermines these principles, intentionally or not, it is the responsibility of the public to push back, to insist that the democratic project continues. Otherwise, silence becomes complicity, and complicity becomes the path to decline. The real tragedy of complacency is how quickly it can turn into resignation. When people believe their voices no longer matter, when they see corruption or recklessness and shrug, they surrender the very power that makes democracy unique. That is what adversaries hope for, that Americans will give up on their own system, leaving it hollow and easily manipulated. Yet history also tells us the opposite is possible. Great democratic awakenings often begin not in halls of power, but in communities, in movements, in citizens deciding that enough is enough. The energy of the people has the capacity to redirect history, but only if it is awakened. This is where the urgency of the moment lies. Trump's miscalculation has brought the United States to a tipping point. If Americans choose passivity, the divisions will deepen, the instability will grow, and the credibility of democracy will erode further. Uh, but if they choose action, demanding accountability, insisting on truth, rebuilding trust in each other, this moment could mark a turning point, not toward collapse, but toward renewal. That choice is not abstract, it is real, immediate, and deeply personal. Every citizen, whether they realize it or not, is already a participant in this struggle because democracy does not permit spectators. The hook that must not be forgotten is this: the future of America will not be written by the mistake that has been made, but by how the people respond to it. Politicians will posture, pundits will argue, and rivals abroad will calculate, but the ultimate decision rests in the hands of the American public. Do they accept a system where reckless leadership goes unchecked, or do they rise to reclaim the principles that once made the country strong? That is the defining question of this moment, and its answer will shape not only the future of the United States, but the stability of the world.